Thanks everyone for joining Seanna Thomas's breakout room. She is a holistic nutritional consultant and a nutrition coach, freelance writer, food educator for moms and families, speaker and media personality. She focuses on realistic, clean eating with a spotlight on healthy family habits. So without further ado, I'll pass the baton over to Seanna to begin her presentation on nutrition tips for parents.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. I appreciate that. And thank you everybody for coming today. I'm really happy that you're here, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to take away a few things that you can implement into your life and that will be helpful for you and your young athletes. And as we go, please feel free to post some questions in the chat. Don't feel you have to remember them right to the end. I usually try and keep my presentations to about 40 minutes and then leave that time for Q&A at the end. But if you're anything like me, I forget my questions as quickly as they come into my head. So feel free to type them in so that we don't forget. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys, and then we will get started. Okay, so preparing our athletes for the return to sports. Okay, so a little bit about me, so you know more about me. My name's Seanna Thomas. As Matt said, I'm a registered holistic nutritional consultant, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm a holistic nutritionist. But across Canada, the designation is changing a little bit. So dietitians are taking the designation of nutritionist, so that we have to get a little bit more creative with what we call ourselves. But anyway, so I just took the chance to extend my title as long as possible. I have 3 kids of my own, 3 active kids. They are, my daughter will be 9 in a couple of weeks, and I have 2 boys aged 10 and 11. So they're all very close together. They're all very active and have played sports. Like at one point they were all playing hockey. They played soccer, they've done lacrosse, football, swimming, rock climbing, Muay Thai, you name it. They've pretty much tried it. We let them, try any sport that they're interested in, because you never know which one is really going to stick and that they're going to love for life. So we really encourage them, to try new things. And it does look like my oldest is leaning more towards hockey, my middle one towards rock climbing, and then my youngest, my daughter, is really into swimming. Although, of course, right now they're really into bike rides, because we are in a province-wide shutdown here in Ontario. So I founded Hockey Snacks. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a bit, but that happened about 4 years ago now. And I've been a nutritionist for well over a decade, but I shifted from families and kids. Well, it's still families and kids, but I shifted more to the young athlete space, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Some fun facts about me. After university, I worked for Blue Man Group for a while. So if you don't know who they are, definitely check them out. They do great live performances and stuff like that. So I was in the theater space for a little while. My husband was in the military for 14 years. So I lived in Petawawa, which is this small little town on the east coast on the border of Ontario and Quebec. And there's a military base there in Petawawa. So we lived there for about 8 years. All my kids were born there. And I'm from originally the Toronto area. So I've lived in sort of big city, small town, kind of done all of that, which has been fun and interesting. And the last thing is, if you grew up in the 80s, which I know Mark and Matt did not, but some of you here might, there was a show called Just Like Mom, and I always wanted to be on it. So, I mean, it's telling. I always wanted to work with food, because you got to bake on the show and stuff. Anyway, they had a revival of the show, and they called it Just Like Mom and Dad, and I was on it with my son. So we didn't win, but he still had fun and prizes and all that good stuff. Okay, let me see. My screen does not seem to be working. Here we go. All right, so here's pictures of my kids. They're older now, but this was them a few years ago when, I'd been working as a nutritionist, and they were all into sports. And I took my son, who's in the bottom corner there with the blonde hair, I took him to his hockey practice at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And, as you do, there's like a parent snack rotation. And I was always the buzzkill mom, bringing the cut up oranges and the muffins and stuff like that. And this was not my particular week to bring snacks. And at 8 a.m., we all walked into the dressing room, and the kids were eating Doritos. And, I'm not evil. My kids do get treats, they do get snacks. But, I realized at that moment that there's a huge disconnect when it comes to being active and fueling your body for performance, even at a young age. And, kids are kids, and I'm all about striking that balance when it comes to, allowing them to have treats. But that association with sport and food just wasn't there. And also nutrition just wasn't in youth development. And still, I have a passion for it, and I'm trying to implement nutrition programs into youth development, but it's just not there. It's left to the parents or the coaches, right? It's up to us to know what to feed our kids, when to do it, and to fuel them properly. So it was kind of that light bulb moment, and that's when my company began. And I started bringing healthy and allergy-friendly snacks for my team, and then other teams caught wind of it. Eventually, I was doing it for the entire league, and it snowballed into what it is now with the workshops and the programs and the seminars and all of that. So I'm very thankful to be where I am now. But yeah, it was one of those, aha moments that I just saw. And so, I guess I have to thank Doritos a little bit. So why is nutrition important for young athletes? I mean, we all know that nutrition is essential for active kids and any kids, really all of us, nutrition is essential, but even more so for young athletes, because they are at they have more activity, they're expending more energy. But not only that, they need to recover because they are so active and they're still growing. So nutrition can play a huge part, not only in fueling for performance, but also that recovery and growth piece, which is really important. And it's not about being strict. I'm not about, asking 9-year-old kids that they have to be on a strict diet and eat every 2 hours and include X amount of protein. It's not about that. It's really about bridging that association of eating healthy with being active. But yeah, the muscle development and recovery piece is absolutely huge. And, they can have more energy. A lot of kids are gassed out by the end of a game or a tournament or even a practice, and implementing small, simple changes to their nutrition can have huge effects on their energy. They can have less cramping and digestion issues, because there are certain foods that if you eat too close to an activity can actually your body doesn't know whether to focus on performance or digestion, and it can really hinder both. So that can cause cramping and digestion issues, and it can cause, that lack in performance as well. And like I mentioned, recovery is really important. And if you recover consistently and really implement these changes for your kids, and I'll tell you in a bit, but it's like really simple stuff can actually prevent injuries in the future, because if you're nourishing the muscles on a consistent basis, they're going to start to repair faster from that nourishment, and that's going to prevent future injuries, which is huge. Increased focus. So this is a really big one. A lot of people, don't see the correlation between nutrition and focus. And so focus for sport, absolutely. Like if you're hangry, and we've all been there, you can't work properly, you can't focus on things. And it's the same for our kids. It's really important that we give them that proper nutrition and things that are going to feed their bodies, but also their brains. And this will be beneficial for them, not only in sport, but also in school and for us in our work life, right? And then, of course, better overall performance and just wellness in general. If you start to implement healthy habits now for our kids, no matter what age they're at, this is something that will benefit them in life, whether they decide to continue with this sport, whether they get to an elite level or not, whether they switch sports or whether they stop playing completely. Nutrition is one of those skills that really is for life. So I appreciate, and trust me, with my 3 kids in sport, I appreciate all the different trainings and tools and skills development that they're given from all these different coaches. But I also want them to know how to nourish their body and have ownership over their nutrition, so that no matter where they are in life, they know how to fuel themselves properly. So when I was growing up, this is what nutrition and athletes looked like. Right? It was all about marketing. It was all ads. It was all these sponsorships, Wayne Gretzky and the Coke. I mean, this is what it was. And this is what I thought, athletes could eat whatever they wanted. And for the most part, they did, because there wasn't a lot of science behind it. There was like carb loading and this and that. And but you wouldn't really see a lot of athletes eating well. you would just see sort of the products that they were pushing in ads like this. And so you would think with all the information that we have nowadays that things would be a little bit different, but really they're not. Really, this is what our kids are seeing. They're seeing their idols, with all of these products, and not realizing that perhaps they actually don't eat or drink this food, and especially when it comes to performance. So, Gatorade sponsors the NHL, so all the bottles are going to have their product labels on them, but a lot of those bottles don't actually contain Gatorade. So, these are things that we should be talking to our kids about so that they're really well informed, and they're not just saying, hey, I'm going to go eat KFC because Ronaldo was holding a bucket of it, when we all know that he's not eating KFC before he gets on the field, right? This is the kind of stuff I would love, love, love if this was on the cover of magazines and in commercials and we saw this a little bit more, right? Because, Tom Brady, especially, he's had an amazing career, and the things that he's accomplished are astronomical. And he credits a ton of that to his diet and to his nutrition. Now, he definitely is on the extreme end of the spectrum, but look at what it's done for him. I mean, he's clearly putting in the training as well, and he's putting in the work, but that nutrition does play a huge role. And you only have to look at athletes like this to see what kind of results you can get from proper nutrition and really fueling your performance. So, how do we prepare our athletes, right? Our young athletes that maybe, are just doing sports on the weekends or playing house league, and they're just doing it for fun. When Gordon was talking about, our kids really doing this for the right reasons and us supporting them in the right way, nutrition's the same. We don't want to overwhelm our kids with, you have to have pregame fuel and you have to do postgame recovery and all of this stuff. I just like to start to create these healthy habits and get our kids really thinking about that association between nutrition for performance, like how it relates to performance for our kids, not just eat broccoli because, it's good for you. It's like, how about having this fuel at this time? Because then you're going to be faster. You're going to have more energy towards the end of the game. And, it potentially, with that more energy, you could win more games, because if your whole team is on board, then, you all are going to have more energy. You all are going to feel better because of it. And that could in turn end up with more wins or, more fun, because you have that energy to do it and you're not gassed at the end of practice. So what are the right foods that I'm talking about? So of course, carbohydrates. So first and foremost, I want to say I never, ever, ever will recommend that our kids remove any foods from their diet. As kids, they should have access to any and all foods. It's just about, when we're going to eat those foods and how they relate to performance for our kids. So I'm really skeptical of anybody that says, we should cut down on carbs or fats or anything like that for our kids, because it's all energy and it's all fuel for our kids. Of course, there's tweaks we can make. And as a nutritionist, I'm going to tell you that, there are foods that are better than others, but also our kids need to be kids, and they need to have cake at birthday parties, and they need to have pizza. It's just about when we're going to do that, when it pertains to performance, and how we can really encourage our kids to have those healthy habits. So carbohydrates are a really essential energy for our kids, and it's really easy for our body to access carbohydrates as energy. So our body turns all carbohydrates, whether it's fruits and vegetables, whole grains, anything, turns it into sugar in our body, into glycogen, which then sits in our muscles in our liver, and then it's easily accessed by our body as energy. So carbohydrates are absolutely huge, especially when we're talking about pre-game fuel. And what kind of carbohydrates am I talking about? Well, obviously, I like to go more towards real whole foods versus, refined sugars and things like that. As an example, two foods that are pure carbohydrates and energy for our kids and how they affect our body differently is donuts and oatmeal. So let's say you have an early morning practice, you didn't have time to eat anything, you grab a donut on the way to the field, the rink, the pool, whatever it is. And you know how quickly our kids can eat a donut. So 30 seconds later, it's gone, and it's full of sugar, which is a carbohydrate, and it will give your kids energy, but there's also nothing else in there to slow it from being absorbed into the bloodstream. So that sugar goes directly into the bloodstream, spikes the blood sugar up like this. It does give your kids energy, But then what happens is your body's always trying to maintain a balance, and it releases insulin, which then drops the blood sugar down. And when the sugar is so high, it releases a ton of insulin, and that's when the sugar crashes happen. And what you're doing, especially if you do something like this first thing in the morning, is you're setting yourself up for this roller coaster effect, because your blood sugar is going to go up, your body's going to bring it down. Once again, it's trying to maintain a balance, so it wants to bring it back up, but it's looking for a quick fix. It's not looking for a piece of fruit or a bowl of oatmeal, right? It's looking for another donut or another high sugar item to try and maintain that balance. So then if you eat another high sugary item, what happens? Your blood sugar goes back up and then back down. So we have this roller coaster effect, and that can have huge effects, not only on their performance, but on their mood, their focus, their behavior. Over time, if we do this often, can have detrimental effects on the health as well, because we always want to try and maintain that blood sugar level for our kids. It's just a really healthy way to sustain energy on a regular basis, not even, when it comes to performance. Of course, like I said, if they have birthday cake at a birthday party, yes, they're going to get that spike. Yes, they're going to get that crash. But do we want that crash in the middle of a game or a practice? Of course not, right? So if you had the oatmeal instead, your body's going to turn it into sugar in your body. But there's also tons of fiber and vitamins and minerals in there. And what happens is it slowly releases that sugar into the bloodstream. So it is going to go up because it's still energy. It's still going to bring your blood sugar levels up for energy. But then what's going to happen is it's going to level off, and then it's going to sustain because of that slow release. So then you can start making good choices later on, because you're not hangry, you don't have that crazy dip in blood sugar, and your energy is going to last so much longer. So it's going to last for the whole game or the whole practice or the whole morning. So that's why I always encourage real whole foods, whole grains, fruits and vegetables as much as possible, because that's the kind of energy our body craves. It really maintains that balance for us, especially when we're talking about fueling for performance. So protein is a massive discussion always when we're talking about young athletes, and it should be, because protein is essential for our kids as well. It can be used as an energy source, but it's a really inefficient process. So carbohydrates are always king when we're talking about energy. And I do like to talk about protein when it comes to recovery, repair of the muscles, and for growth. When we're talking about our kids, they need protein for growth. They need protein for focus and brain health and immune system support. So we do want to encourage our kids to eat lots of protein. We just want to make sure that they're having it at the right time. It's important too. I'm not a big numbers person. I'm really big on how our kids are feeling and being in tune with their bodies, and knowing how certain foods affect their performance and, their digestive system and things like that. But one thing I can tell you is our kids can't digest more than about 20 grams of protein at any given time. So we want to make sure that we're spreading the protein out throughout the day so that their bodies can really utilize all of it, instead of maxing out, 40, 50 grams of protein in one go, because really 30 grams of that is just going to either turn to fat in the body or just literally be flushed down the toilet. So we want to make sure that we are giving our kids protein all throughout the day. And we'll talk about timings a little bit more. Another way to look at protein too is your kids are probably getting enough. Let's say we have a 100-pound athlete. And once again, I'm not big on numbers, but I know some parents really like to kind of map it out and have a look at their kids' diet. So I would say start off by looking at what your kid eats in a few days, maybe food journal, and then see how much protein they're really getting. I like to start with 0.5 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So that's 50 grams for an 100-pound athlete. So 50 grams of protein, you can actually hit really, really quickly. When you think like 2 eggs and a glass of milk is 20 grams of protein. If they're eating protein at lunch or protein at dinner, they're hitting that, threshold of 50 grams. Now you can go up to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, but that's actually really, really high. And that's for like highly elite, working out every day for numerous hours a day kind of athlete. We don't really need to hit that high of a level. And at that point, it really probably is too much for your athlete. So I always say to start at that 0.5 gram threshold. And then if you see that they're, fatigued or they're not recovering fast or whatever, then we can start to maybe add some more protein in. Or just go by how they feel to begin with, and don't really worry about the numbers. Just make sure if they're getting protein little bits throughout the day at breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, they're most likely getting enough, and you don't need to worry about it. Because I know a lot of parents, this is a big concern for a lot of parents. Okay, healthy fats. So this is one that I absolutely love, because healthy fats, I call it kind of like, it kind of lubes the pipes. It's great for overall health and wellness, hair, skin, and nails, brain health, but it's also great as an anti-inflammatory, as a recovery aid. So having a little bit of fat after activity can actually help when it comes to muscle soreness, and muscle repair as well. So a really great option even is like a handful of trail mix or something like that, because the healthy fats in the nuts are going to help with that anti-inflammatory. Also, nuts and seeds, avocado, fish, if you can get it into your kids, are really, really great sources of healthy fats. And those are the fats that we want to focus on and concentrate on, not, French fries and pizza and things like that. And then, of course, water. We always want our kids to be hydrating. It's been shown that even dehydration of 2% can have huge effects on performance and muscle recovery and things like that. So we want to make sure that our muscles are performing at an optimal level, which means we should really be hydrating them all the time. So even if our kids aren't at an elite level, we want to make sure they're always sipping on water, always having those opportunities to hydrate. It's really, really important. And almost, I would say, equally as important as proper nutrition is making sure that they're hydrated all the time. If your kids, I know my kids get really sick of water sometimes, you can spice it up, and it doesn't have to be with a sugary drink. You can add, you can get those infuser water bottles and put, fruit in there to infuse the taste of the water. I love to put in like watermelon or berries and stuff like that. Cucumber water, you can put mint in the water, or even just a squeeze of citrus. Some kids love just lemon or lime, a little squeeze of orange. Just be careful that you're not doing like some people do, half and half juice and water as a drink for their kids while they're participating in sport. And this can actually cause some digestive upset, especially if they're running around a lot. So just a squeeze is all you need. You just want that bit of flavor. And there's tons of sparkling waters out there too, which is great, because a lot of them, I always encourage the ones with no sugar in them, and they have those essences of flavor. They're really great for kids because it all counts towards hydration. But this, of course, is away from sport. We don't want them, burping up the bubbles when they're participating in their activity. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about timings. And this is something that we can implement, but like I said, just choose one thing. Just choose one thing that you think would be really easy to implement for your kids. And then, just start doing it on a regular basis until it becomes like tying your shoes, something you don't even think of anymore. And then you can start to work on some of these other timings. Because if you do it all at once, it becomes overwhelming, not only for your young athlete, but also for us as parents. Because of course, we are the ones that are starting to develop these habits for our kids until they get to the point where they can start to take ownership, and then they can start to do these habits themselves. But we don't want to cause more stress. If all of this nutrition talk and all of this is causing you more stress, just take a step back. Don't worry about it for now. The stress isn't worth it. We want to make sure that we're doing this and making it easy, that we're helping our kids fuel performance in an easy and stress-free way for them and for you. So pregame, there's 3 timings that we can really work on pregame for our kids. And the first one is 3 to 4 hours before. So when you have that much time before activity, this is when you can have a really great meal that includes protein, complex carbohydrates, lots of fiber, vegetables, all of that goodness. This can be that spaghetti and meatballs meal if you have 3 to 4 hours. Now, we don't want to be eating to the point where we're feeling groggy or tired or sluggish. We want to eat until we're about 80% full. But this is the time when you can have all of those foods, because there's that time for your body to digest. And like I said, we want to include protein, and the carbohydrates are going to help boost those energy stores. And you can really include whatever food you want at this point. Now, 2 hours before, if you weren't able to have that big meal, this is when you can have sort of a smaller meal or a bigger snack, something like a chicken wrap, a fruit and yogurt parfait with granola, even a banana peanut butter wrap in a tortilla, something like that, because you still have 2 hours to allow for digestion. But as we get closer to activity, we want to focus less on protein fats and fiber, and more on carbohydrates. Because like I said before, this is easiest for your body to digest. And we want your body to be able to fully digest it, turn it into energy so that your kids can really access that and not have, a brick in their belly when they start their activity. Now, 1 hour before is a real game changer. So if you take anything away from this and one of my post-game timings is going to be huge. And one of those things you can easily implement into your child's nutrition program. So 1 hour before, this is when you want to have a carbohydrate focused, easily digestible snack. And this is going to boost their energy stores, and give them those extra minutes of energy that they can access, an hour into practice or at the end of the game. And a lot of people don't think about that 1 hour before, because this is when they're getting their stuff ready. They're on their way to practice or the game. But even something as simple as a banana, you'll hear me say a lot if you follow me, is my favorite fruit. Really easy to digest. Your body recognizes what it is. It's portable, it's pre-packaged, pre-portioned. It's naturally sweet. It has natural sugars in it. It's so good for you. I absolutely love them. If you have a banana 1 hour before activity, then this is the boost that you are going to take away so much energy from. And it doesn't, if your kids don't like bananas, it can be something else, but you want it to be carbohydrate focused and really easy to digest. So for parents, now is the time to really practice these things so that your young athlete knows how certain foods feel in their bodies. Because some kids, will like apples, but maybe their bodies take a little bit longer than an hour to digest and they're still getting a little bit crampy. So practice. This is the best time. Or if there's an off season, that is really an amazing time to start practicing some pregame meals and snacks and post-game recovery, so that when you are in the regular season, you already know exactly what works and exactly what's going to give you the right energy. So when we're talking about post-game, there's really two timings here. And the biggest one, and I talked to a lot of athletes, especially professional athletes, that said this is the one timing, if they could go back and tell their younger self, or tell young athletes these days, this is the one thing that they wish they knew when they were growing up, because it would help so much with recovery. And that is, within 30 to 60 minutes of activity, have something to eat. Within 30 to 60 minutes. This is when your metabolic rate is at its highest. Your body is ready and willing to accept the nutrients from this food to help your muscles recover and repair. And don't forget, our young athletes are still growing. So this is an amazing opportunity for your body to really utilize those nutrients for optimal performance. So what do we want to include here? We want carbohydrates to help replace those energy stores that you just used up. You want protein for that muscle recovery, repair, and growth. We want fats bonus, for that anti-inflammatory properties. And of course, we want to hydrate. So my favorite post-game recovery snack is a smoothie that you make yourself. You know exactly what's in it. The fruit is the sugar. So you have that natural sugar in there. Milk or milk alternative, and maybe throw in a scoop of peanut butter or hemp hearts to add that extra protein and those healthy fats as well. So it can be really simple. You don't have to overthink it. Even just developing this habit with your kids right now, because I know a lot of kids don't feel like eating right after activity, but just something. If they don't want to eat like solid food, that's why a smoothie is great too, because they're probably thirsty, and then they can just drink it back, and they're nourishing their body and giving it everything that it needs. So the second timing is 2 to 3 hours after that, because your body's still revved up and it's still going to be using all of those carbohydrates. So even though you're giving your body those carbohydrates to replace those energy stores, it's going to still be using them to help the body recover and repair. So if you can, eat again 2 to 3 hours later. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just wake up the next day and start your day off right with a really good meal. Oh, events. So this is things like tournaments where the kids have more than one game in a day, up to 2 to 3 games, or they have a practice and a game on the same day. We want to make sure that we're nourishing that body in those in-between times. And this is really a time when you want to know your timings in between. And I know that schedules change all the time. I know I've been in a lot of tournaments with my kids. But if you know ahead of time that you're going to have, 2 hours between game one, game two, and 3 hours between the next one, then you can really plan out your day and pack the right snacks, making sure you have some easily digestible carbohydrate focused snacks. You have some liquid snacks if your kids just don't feel like eating in between or don't have time. And you have some protein snacks as well to help with those recovery and repair. But having lots of options available that are small snacks or bigger meals for your athlete to access is huge. And then it gives them the option. And that's why it's so good to have these conversations with your kids too, so they really understand what foods are going to fuel them at what time. Another thing that's really great too about practicing ahead of time is tournaments are not the time that you want to be practicing these sorts of foods or trying out new foods. We don't want your kids to start a game with a cramp or have foods that really aren't making them feel very well. We want those tried and true energy snacks, pre-game snacks, post-game snacks, especially on those tournament days when it's so important. And we want to make sure that they have lots of access to hydration as well. And then of course there's the off season, which for me is all about practicing. So practicing proper nutrition, but also allowing yourself to be a kid, have the snacks, go to the barbecues, have the cakes, do all that stuff. And I'm not saying you can't do it in the regular season too, but definitely allow yourself, a little bit of space. And it does depend. So for a lot of kids, off season does mean just switching to a different sport. For some kids, off season means not playing a sport at all. So depending on what your kids are doing, their nutrition does matter, because they're probably eating a lot of food during regular season. And then if they're not playing that sport and they don't have their practice and their games 5 times a week, they don't need that same level of food. So it really does matter, what they're doing, what their activity level is, and then you can sort of look at their nutrition. But definitely practicing, coming up with new pregame meals, coming up with new postgame recovery snacks, and giving your kids the ownership to make their own smoothies, make their own energy bites, make their own wraps and things like that, so that they know, okay, I know what to eat, I know how to make it, and you're there just for support. So a few other things that we can do to really support our kids: be consistent, right? The more consistent we are with practicing proper nutrition, the more it becomes a healthy habit. And, that's really what we want when we're talking about our young athletes. We want them to know how to nourish themselves and do it on a regular basis. If they're just doing it one time in the season, it's not going to be beneficial for their game. And we want to have realistic expectations as well. So, our kids aren't going to be doing this each and every game and each and every practice, and that's okay. They're learning, and making mistakes is okay, because then they can see how their performance is different, which is really cool, right? They say, oh man, I forgot my pregame smoothie. And if they don't have as much energy, or they're not feeling as great during their game, they can chalk it up to, man, that pregame fuel really, really helps me, which is cool. And like I said, one change at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't overwhelm your athlete. One small, simple change at a time. Just come up with some fun, recovery snacks and keep them in the car or keep them in their bag. And that's a really, if you can, of course, if they don't need to be refrigerated. But it's a great way to bond with your kid, talk about their sport in a way that doesn't directly relate to their skills, and how they're doing in their team. Constant encouragement is key. As we all know, when we're making changes and trying to make those healthy changes, New Year's resolutions and stuff, if you have a support team behind you cheering you on, you're going to want to do it more, and you're going to make those changes more easily, and setting them up for success. So as a parent, we always start developing these habits for our kids, but we don't want to always be doing that, because then their habit is that somebody else is making them a smoothie, right? We want to give them that ownership. So making sure you have everything in your pantry, have frozen fruit in your freezer, making sure, they know where the blender is, and they know how to use it properly. Things like that can have a huge effect on our kids. And then they feel more confident. They can do it themselves. There's nothing like, seeing your kid make their own snack and then bring it to a practice and be so proud of the fact not only that they made it, but it's nutritious, they're doing their body good, they're fueling for performance, and then letting their teammates see it too. And then, you know, you just don't know who you're impacting. So giving your kids ownership is huge. Why it matters? Well, obviously, like I've talked about, healthy habits. I mean, if we can develop those at an early age, then, you know, they're set up for success throughout their life. Obviously, growth and development, right? It's not just about fueling for performance, especially when we're starting early on. We want our kids to grow and we want them to develop in their sport, but also just in life. So doing these things with them obviously is encouraging some really, really healthy things as they grow older. Giving them the knowledge, right? If they know, okay, having a pregame, carbohydrate focused, easily digestible snack an hour before means that I have more energy, you know, at the end of my practice or at the end of my game, and I feel really good and I'm nourishing my body. They know this stuff and it's so cool. Like, I don't think we give our kids enough credit. They really soak in all this information, and when it relates to their sport, they're definitely more inclined to do it. And sports or not, nutrition, like I said, is one of those tools in the toolbox that is going to help them no matter what they decide to do in life. So giving them these sorts of tools and information is beneficial no matter what. You're doing their body good, giving them these amazing, amazing experiences and things that they are going to remember through life. And it'll be those nostalgic things where it's like, oh man, my banana strawberry smoothie. Like, those are the habits we want to have, right? So you walk out the door with your banana and strawberry smoothie every time you go to soccer practice, and then when they're like 25 and they have a banana strawberry smoothie, they're going to go, man, this brings back such amazing memories. So those are great things we can do. So as parents, what can we do? We can be prepared. We can have things ready for them. Celebrating successes, allowing mistakes. Our kids are going to make mistakes. Even if you make mistakes, show them you make mistakes and what you're doing, you know, to make it better for the next time. Giving your kids ownership. You know, my kids at a very young age were helping in the kitchen, making their own snacks, making their own smoothies. It doesn't have to be difficult. It can be really, really simple. And then it's something that they can do on their own, which is really an amazing gift that we can give our kids. Being an example is huge. So if you're telling your kids, you know, you need to have this kind of food because you're going to practice, if you are also being active, do the same thing. Show them that you are on board. Ask for help if you need it. You know, there's people out there that are willing to help you. Obviously, you know, if you guys want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to you about your specific situation and your young athlete and how we can really implement these healthy habits. And like I said, practice, practice, practice. It's the best way. And I know we don't think about nutrition and practicing it, but it really is one of the things you have to do over and over. Repetition is key for it to become that habit. And with coaches, you know, things aren't too different for coaches. They also need to be an example for the kids. If they're telling them not to drink Gatorade, but they walk into the dressing room with a Gatorade every day, you know, it's mixed messages for our kids. We want to be that example for them. Implementing rules also is huge. If you don't want them to eat certain foods, or you do want them to eat certain foods, implement those rules. Routine and structure, actually, our kids thrive off routine and structure. So, you know, as a coach and a role model for them, if you say, everybody needs to have, you know, a recovery snack ready, blah, blah, blah. Try and make it a really fun thing that they can do as a team. Team workshops are really fun. You know, like I do virtual team workshops where we make smoothies together, we make energy bites together. And it's fantastic because the kids are engaged. They're doing something hands-on that relates to their sport. They're doing it with their team. It's really fun and something that they can actually implement and use. Team meals, especially at tournaments, you know, instead of just going out for pizza in between games, which isn't going to benefit your next game, you know, do something together, buy all this stuff to make sandwiches together, or go to a healthy restaurant and see who can have, you know, the most colors in their food. Give those opportunities for success, for hydration breaks, to make sure that your kids are getting the food that they need, talking to the parents if you need to. And then of course you can implement nutrition programs as well on a consistent basis to really help your kids know how this is helping on a more consistent level. So my business is Hockey Snacks, but we work with kids of all sports, all ages, all levels. And we do those team workshops. We do nutrition and team coaching. We have programs for young athletes as well and for parents. And I have a free group on Facebook that I would love for you to join called Fuel More Wins. Just search it up in the groups and you'll be added to that. In fact, next week I'm going to be on with my kids making some recipes to help fuel for performance. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I would love to see you all there. And you can contact me anytime really. Just send me an email or you can find me online, Facebook and Instagram, or check out the website. There's lots of recipes on there as well, and blog posts and things like that. So I would love for you to check it out no matter the sport your child plays. And just reach out anytime. I love talking about this stuff, love talking about food, and I would be so happy to help you. So please feel free anytime. Thank you guys so much for being here and listening. And if you have any questions, oh, I went a little over, but we have 10 minutes. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I will just stop sharing my screen here.
All right, thanks so much, Seanna. That was a fantastic presentation. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask Seanna. Now's the time.
And like I said, if you don't have any questions right now, but you think of any later, you can always reach out to me and ask another time if you don't want to do it publicly as well.
All right, so we got 2 questions in the chat. First from Rachel. Do you have any recommendations for a cookbook to help get started?
That's a great question. You know what? I am a lover of cookbooks and I collect them. So I have like an entire bookshelf of cookbooks. But when it comes to our young athletes, there are some that are geared more towards kids and families that would work really well for athletes. But when it comes to a cookbook that is very specific for like pre-game fuel and post-game recovery, I haven't stumbled on one yet. I've been actually encouraged to write one, which might happen in the future. But if you want to write me, Rachel, I'm happy to give you some recipes for, pre, post, all of that stuff. But just looking for cookbooks that your kids would enjoy. So there is a company called Sweet Potato Chronicles that has 2 cookbooks out, maybe even 3 now. And all their recipes are really family friendly. And what I like to do is flip through it with my kids and give them little sticky notes. And then any of the recipes that all 3 of my kids say they want to try, we'll make those recipes together. And just looking at the ingredients and what's involved in it, we can say, okay, this would be more of a pre-game meal, something that we need lots of time to digest, or something, like a power pancake recipe we can have that can digest pretty quickly, things like that. But yeah, I'm happy to send you a couple of different recommendations. I'm just looking up at my bookshelf now with all of my cookbooks, but there's Sweet Potato Chronicles is great. And their first one's called How to Feed a Family, and then the next one's the school survival one. So lots of like muffin recipes and ones that are really geared towards kids. So really, really good in there.
Great. Rachel says, will do for looking for books. Next question comes from Glenn. What do you think of meal kits like HelloFresh?
That's a great question, Glenn. I love to cook. So I don't use them very often, but I have actually a couple of times. And the reason I do like them is it can expose us to new flavors and new different recipes that your kids may want to try. Another reason I really like them is when we talk about giving our kids ownership in the kitchen, the meal kits are broken down so well that my son, when he was 9, made us an entire meal from beginning to end from HelloFresh. And it was the coolest thing. I mean, obviously I was in the kitchen, making sure he didn't burn himself, but he did everything, absolutely everything. So I love those kits for that purpose. And they, you can choose them. So you can choose, some healthier options, and they tend to be pretty healthy. Like they're pretty good. So I'm all for them, especially if you are not a big cook and you don't love being in the kitchen. Having everything kind of done for you is a real bonus. And then having your kids be able to make the food too, or at least make it with you, is fantastic. So I'm actually a really big fan of those meal kits for sure.
Great. Glenn says thanks.
You are welcome. Thank you guys again for coming. This was a really, really fun. I love talking about this stuff, so it's great. I think Mark, you've seen a couple of my presentations now, so you know I can like talk forever about this stuff. Mm.
All right, Matthew's got a question in the chat. Can you explain a little bit more about the best foods to eat before you sleep? I'm one of those people that tends to get hungry at night, but my sleep gets affected. So I'm wondering what tips you have.
Absolutely. So great question, Matthew. So there are some foods that, you know, have certain properties in them that can help with sleep. The biggest thing is you want foods that are calming. So you don't want things that are going to really rev up your digestive system. So things that like things that are high protein, high fiber, maybe high in fat right before bed may not be the best thing for you if you find that your sleep is affected. I find things like yogurt, you know, maybe even I believe Brazil nuts are high in magnesium, things like that, that can really sort of have magnesium or calcium and things in them that are nice and calming, really good for the muscles too, to calm the muscles. Those are really great. I like to have, you know, like herbal teas and things like that. But if you're really hungry, I would say just things that don't affect your digestive system even during the day. Those are the items that you want to have at night. So, you know, a lot of people will say that they'll eat like fruit at night or snack on other things. But if that's not, you know, if that's too high in fiber for you and you're finding that that's really affecting you, just go with what makes you feel best. But I know lots of people will have like a bowl of cereal before bed. That's carbohydrate. So that's going to, you know, be really easy for your body to digest. You may not want to eat and then go directly to bed. Maybe give yourself at least, you know, an hour to digest before you lie down, because also lying down, the food can come up a little bit higher, which can affect sleep for sure. So that's what I would recommend. I would say go with the foods that you know don't have an effect on your digestion, but also things that have calcium and magnesium. And sometimes that's just like having a little yogurt and fruit before bed, or even just like a glass of milk or a cup of tea, something like that. Or like I said, cereal. If cereal doesn't affect you, that can be something that you have at night. I hope that helps.
Yeah,
a little bit.
like I'm like, yeah. And is there like a specific time where you should like stop eating? Like I go to bed probably like around like 11:30, wake up at 7. So like I usually try to stop eating, but like before 9 at least. But like I said, like sometimes it's just, you know, can't control my hunger. So
oh man, if you're hungry, eat. So that's what I always say to young athletes too, right? Like if you're hungry, your body's telling you that it needs some food. It doesn't mean you have to have a whole meal, but just having a little something like a small meal, a small wrap, something like that. But definitely, you know, try and stay away from maybe high fiber, high protein foods if they are upsetting your stomach a little bit. But yeah, usually like a fruit or something shouldn't be too bad, or even like a fruit and nuts or fruit and nut butter. Something like that might be good. My kids, I've given them before, we call them apple nachos. So we slice up a whole bunch of apples and drizzle like yogurt or peanut butter or something on them. And then it takes a lot longer to eat because it's kind of like nachos. And it's more fun to eat than just like eating an apple. But that way, you know, you're telling your body that you're getting food. It takes longer to eat. There is fiber in there. But as long as you give your body, you know, at least an hour or two, like you said, if it's like 9 or even 9:30 that you're eating something, if you're finished by 10:30 and you give your body at least an hour to digest before you lie down, you should be good.
awesome. Thank you. That helps a lot.
You're very welcome. Good. I'm glad. All right, you guys, I think if there's no more questions, we can probably start heading back into the main room. I think we're 3 minutes early. Perfect.
Awesome. I have a question just before we wrap up. You seem quite creative when it comes to making meals for your kids that are healthy. Like the apple nachos are just amazing. So do you have any other cool creations that you could share with us? Like meals like that?
You know, some of my most popular ones, especially with young athletes, are things like energy bites. So I usually try and when it comes to athletes, you know, give them things that they can make, but that are easy, right? That they don't have to cook and don't have to like wait for or bake. So, you know, things like energy bites that are made with like oats and nut butter and sweetened with a little maple syrup. Those are really great, or hemp hearts. We make banana sushi a lot here. So things that like you take a whole wheat tortilla, put some nut butter on it, a banana in the middle, you can put in some cereal, Rice Krispies or granola or something and roll it up and then cut it. And so it looks kind of like sushi. So we do that every once in a while. And I actually make a cookie dough dip for my kids and I serve it with fruit, and it is actually, the base of it is made out of beans. So it's really high
Wow.
protein, but you can't take it, actually tastes like cookie dough.
That's
So
amazing.
things like that are, yeah, things like that are a really great way to get your kids to have like a healthy snack that's going to really nourish them and keep them full for a while.
Awesome. Well, thanks for so much for sharing. We're going to be brought back into the main session in just a couple of seconds here. So thanks again.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.